Also, I have one more thing, and this is the opioid funding. As you know, the state of Indiana engaged in a lawsuit with the medical opioid providers and received some funding for that. There's two separate funds that each political subdivision receives. And in the case of Washington County, there were significant funds, some of which go to the general fund that can be spent anyway, and then some can only be used for opioid remediation uses. And what we have proposed is a small amount of those remediation opioid use funds to go to a program that may help the system navigator, may help the public defender's office, but more importantly help the parents for situations. We just had a situation last week where a parent had done everything else right. This is another child in need of services. They had gone to treatment, they had done well, they had submitted a number of negative drug screens and did not have the money yet to get into an apartment. And that was the only thing we were waiting on. We were waiting for them to raise the funds to be able to put down a security deposit. And they waited an extra couple months, still continue to do well, and got that apartment. We would use these funds, among other things, to help those people get cribs, to get car seats, to get security deposits down, and we think it'll be a good use of the remediation funds. It's a relatively small use, so it'll still be enough to use for law enforcement, anything else that anybody that comes forward for any opioid program, and we hope to work with law enforcement in the future to come up with a program that works good for everyone. So the city has already made a decision to give us $4,500, so hopefully that'll come in over the next year, and I'd ask the council to do the same. And like I said, the only thing that these funds can be used for is opioid remediation, things that reduce the drug use in the county, and we have a program that we think does that, meets the required uses, and ask for $4,500. This year, Washington County, I think, is going to get $127,000-ish, and we're asking for $4,500 of it.
Judge Houchin, did you have something to ask?
Yeah, so I came as a prosecutor a couple months ago to you guys and said, suggested that the opioid money be referred to the JRAC committee, and you did that. So I think it's appropriate that goes to that committee. And I want to say about the public defender office and my good friend Mr. Bauer, I hope he's not offended by it, but the public defender is not elected. The judges and the prosecutor are elected, so there's an inherent political constraint on the amount of money that the judges and the public defender and the prosecutor spend. So there's a political incentive to not go over your budget. In fact, there's a political incentive to cut your budget. But since the public defender is not elected, like many agencies, there's an incentive to grow your agency and claim more money in the system, which I think Mr. Bauer should do and attempt to do. I just ask the council, when you're making financial decisions, think of it as there's only so much money available for the justice system. And the more you give one agency, the less is available to other agencies. And the only agency that's going to come in and request more money without the constraint of the political oversight on the budget is the public defender office. Not that they shouldn't get more money. I just think I'm asking you to view the system holistically. I'm not faulting Public Defender Officer Mr. Bauer for asking for that, but this is a good example of this probably sounds like a great idea to you, but if you use that money there, it's not available for other things and you haven't heard from everybody else in the system, which is why the JRAC Board is a good place to vet these things, because it's made up of every member of the system, including Rondell's on the board, so the council member, the mayor's on the board. There's a bunch of people that are interested in the justice system that can vet this out. And if we can come to an agreement and bring it to you, great. If we can't, you may have to make decisions. But I would just encourage you on those systemic changes or funding for the justice system to send it to that board first.
Thank you. If I may, going to that board first and talking about the program there. I think it's a good program. I think I'll get approval there and be happy to come back next month. We have enough funds probably in the meantime with the city to do that. So there's no rush. I can do that over the next month or so. But I will say I disagree a little bit, as sometimes I do respectfully with Judge Houchin. And that is the public defender being not elected. I have 7 bosses, right? I mean, that's there is some political ability to the elected constitutional offices to hide amongst a group of voters. And that's not something I can do. I have to each month and certainly each year come to you and say, this is exactly where I spent the money, this is important. And I know each one of you are careful about how you spend your money. It is how you spend the taxpayers' money. It is important to me then to come in at budget, under budget every year, more important each year, because I have to answer to you each year and every month that you want to bring me here. Whereas the constitutional have 4 or 6 years between elections. And sometimes, unfortunately, their decisions cost us money. They choose to determine what cases get filed. They choose how these cases get resolved, whether they go to trial. And I'll be glad to bring each of you into the office and tell you exactly how things are going, how the sausage is being made. It's probably too granular to sit here and talk about in a public hearing, but the office as a group I think is cheaper than any other way that we could do it. I think it delivers better services, both to the judges and to the prosecutor. But yeah, it has to, because I have to come here and I have to show some sort of use and value to the money, whereas we don't have to do that quite as often with our elected officials. So that's it. But with that being said, I don't mind going around and going to other boards and asking for it. It is less than 5%. I think it's like 3.5% of just the opioid funds. It's a very small amount, and we can do a lot of good with that small amount. Like I said, there's no immediate issue on that. I'd be happy.
I think that would be helpful to go to the JRAC board, have that conversation. And one thing I would request too, I would imagine the rest of the council members would like this as well, for you to talk about the systems navigator position. You know, it is approved, but I think it's critical that it works with the rest of the arms of justice. So making sure that you're all on the same page, not duplicating, and perhaps utilizing each other's services, I think would be very helpful. Joe, are you?
I'd just like to make a motion to table this decision until the next meeting.
Motion made. Do I have a second?
I'll say.
Second by Preston. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion tabled.